I'm not sure if you like picking up after somebody else, but I certainly do not. This project was something someone else started but left alone when they ran out of ideas. Now, I can understand that feeling, but I think they should have tried to finish the project because they were on the right track but got derailed at the end. And when you see what I had to do to fix it, it'll make more sense, but you do have to wonder, where did it go all wrong for them? In today's video, we're going to be looking at this echo string trimmer, and the problem is that the engine tries to start, but it will not run for more than a fraction of a second. Now, it came to me with a brand new trimmer head installed on it, so someone was trying to revive this old trimmer, but looks like they gave up on it. It also came with the old ignition coil, which means hopefully there's a new one in its place, but we won't know until we take a look at it. Now, I'm going to try and repair this string trimmer, but yours might be different, so this might not work on yours. So if things are not working out for you, like in the video, please ask about it. I'll be glad to answer your questions. So in the last video, we already went through the carb and serviced it and did a compression test just to make sure the engine was not worn out, because that would also cause the same issue. So that was the result from the compression test in the last video, and with a reading of 150 psi, it shows that it's not worn out and is in fact very healthy and should run just fine. But with how it's acting when you try and start it, you would think that it was worn out when in fact it's not. What that means is the problem is not with the fuel system as far as I can tell, or the compression, and since it's trying to start, the ignition system looks good too. The only thing I could come up with was a spark timing issue, meaning we have spark but it's happening when it's not supposed to. So how could this happen then? Well, the timing event is determined by when the magnets on the flywheel pass by the ignition coil. And if for some reason the key for the flywheel breaks, it'll allow the magnets to pass by at some other time than they're supposed to. So here are the magnets on the flywheel, and right near it is the lower leg of the coil. Now this part is supposed to be a bit closer to the flywheel, but we'll worry about it when we reinstall it after we get the flywheel off for an inspection. Now this part was sourced and installed by someone else, which unfortunately means they could have either installed it incorrectly or bought the wrong part. The part that I'm holding is what I'm assuming was the original part, or at least the part they took off before installing the new one. However, there are a few problems. At first they look pretty much the same, but there are some small differences between them. We'll get a much better look once we get the one that's installed off the engine and have them right next to each other. Now you do have to be extremely careful when buying new parts for your project. If you're just searching for echo trimmer coils, you could find the right parts, but you also might find the wrong ones as well. Now, from the markings on the old coil, I do think this was the original one, which is good to know, but the newer one does seem to be slightly different, and it might be enough to cause some serious issues. Now, we'll come back to this issue later on, but right now we need to carefully take off the clutch assembly, followed by the flywheel. Now, the problem is that we can't just take the flywheel off without the use of some sort of puller. Of course, there are more ways than this to take off the flywheel, but you also risk doing some damage as well, so just be very careful. Now the puller that I'm using is a 2-jaw version, and they're not very expensive, and if you need one but don't want to buy one, you could also rent one. Now once the puller releases the flywheel from the crankshaft, taking it off the engine is now a breeze. So here's the flywheel, and what you're looking for is the key that's part of it, and it's located on the inner edge of the opening. And surprisingly, it looks like the key is intact and shows no damage in any way, which doesn't make any sense. I was very certain that the key would be damaged and allowing the flywheel to be in the wrong position, causing our issues. But that doesn't seem to be the issue at all, and instead we now have to figure out what the next possible cause would be, and I think I know what that might be. Now since I had my suspicions about that blue aftermarket ignition coil, I'm beginning to think that it might be the wrong part for this machine. I'm going to reinstall the flywheel and the clutch back to the engine and then get a better look at those coils. After turning the flywheel so the magnets face the coil's position, I'm going to place the old one against it and see how it should look. So as you can see, this is roughly the way it would sit against the flywheel, and nothing seems to be wrong with it. Next, I'll do the same thing with the newer one and see how it fits, and for the most part, it seems to fit like it should. So this could be the correct replacement part, but we'll take a better look once I've tried a trick with the old one. So as you can see on this one, there's quite a bit of rust all over the metal that's supposed to be grounding it to the engine. And the last time I checked, rust is considered a very poor conductor of electricity, so it might be the reason why this coil isn't working. So after cleaning up the rust on the places where it would make contact with the bolts and the engine, we'll try and see if we can get it working again. So unfortunately, it looks as though we're out of luck with the original one, which doesn't surprise me considering there is a hairline crack in it. And since we know the other replacement part worked but didn't seem to fit the flywheel as well as the old one, I'm going to order a new ignition coil and see how that works instead. So this is the new ignition coil I ordered based on the model and serial number that's on the sticker on the body of the trimmer. Now the first bit of good news is that this one is at least the same color as the old one. Now I am very partial to the blue color of the other one, but I think it was a big clue as to why this engine is not wanting to stay running. It was simply the wrong one. In fact, I'm so confident that it's going to work that I'm not going to test it. Instead, I'm going to put the entire trimmer back together and then try starting it. I know that sounds a bit out of character for me, but think about it this way. We just found out that the ignition timing is right where it's supposed to be. And we already knew that the blue ignition coil worked, so testing if a brand new coil was going to work would have been useless because it's a brand new coil. Of course it's going to work. Those were also the two main causes that were mentioned in the comments, so changing the coil is the only thing that makes sense. We know the compression is good, but we haven't been able to make a call about the carb just yet. However, even without the carb, the engine should have been able to run for longer than a half a second. Now once we get it running long enough to make a call about the carb, then we'll decide on what to do about it. Right now, all I'm interested in is getting it to stay running, and who knows, there might be more problems with this trimmer, but we won't find out until we fix this part. Now, it's not very common that I get a machine with multiple problems. Most times it's just a fuel problem or possibly another minor issue. And of course, it doesn't make any sense to order a new carb until you know the ignition system is working like it should. That means we could still have a carb issue despite me having serviced it. Sometimes, even with your best efforts, these tiny carbs are just tough to get working again. And especially with this type of carb, I do think they designed them in such a way that makes cleaning them really tough to do, and a replacement is probably your best bet. So it looks like the ignition coil was the problem this entire time. However, even after trying to make adjustments to the carb, I still couldn't get it to run correctly. And after each adjustment, it kept doing the same thing, which was to run for a bit and then stop again. Now you could try to keep making adjustments until you run out of adjustments, or you could try and clean the carb again. But more than likely, it's not going to get any better, so you know what time it is, right? It's time for a new carb. So this is a very cheap aftermarket carb, but if you want to buy a factory quality part, well, that's your choice to make. Just be prepared when you see the price. Now the best part about these cheap carbs is that both adjustment screws are uncovered and ready to be used. Now I've never had enough courage nor the money to buy a factory part, but I'm going to guess the screws will be covered, which makes adjusting them just a bit more challenging. I do have an idea for those who are on the fence about getting the more expensive carb over the cheap one. If you want to make sure the engine and the rest of the trimmer works first before committing to spending all that money, then order the cheap one first to make your confirmations, and then once you know that it works like it should, then you can decide to order the factory part. Now, I know I'm going to get a couple of very interesting comments about that idea, but that's fine because you're the one who, in the end, will make up your own mind on what to do. Otherwise, just order the expensive carb and hopefully everything on the machine works like it should. And well, if there is something wrong, at least you stuck with your choice and bought a quality part for a machine that doesn't work. So it looks like this trimmer had two major problems, the first one being a bad ignition coil that was unfortunately replaced with the incorrect part. But once we got that squared away, turns out the carb was the next item we needed to fix. Now just because you installed a new carb on an old machine doesn't mean it's going to run like it should. That's why it's so important to be able to get to the fuel adjustment screws. It'll allow you to make the adjustments you need to make that new carb work for that 15-year-old machine. I will say this project had me scratching my head for quite a while, and although I never recommend loading the parts Canon, I think this was the proper time to do it. So my question is, have you ever had to throw a ton of parts at a project before to get it finished? And if so, what were you working on and how did that project turn out? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.